Thomas Kleine-Brockhoff. I'm a German citizen. I was living in Hamburg, Germany in 1989. I was turning 29 that year. And it sure was a special year for me. And it started one day in August when a friend called and said, "Thomas, I need your help, and I need your car." And I said, "Sure. What do you need? Why do you need it? What do you want me to do?" Well, then he started to tell me a story that I didn't know about him. He told me that he had fallen in love with this East German girl. I said, "East German girl? How did you meet an East German girl? There's the wall. How do you get there?" Sure, West Germans could travel to East Germany, but it was hard. It was hard to get a visa. He told me the story that he did cross into the East by going to Prague. And Prague was a place where East Germans were allowed to go. So this was a place where East and West Germans could actually meet. So over the course of their love affair, they started talking about her leaving East Germany. Now that was easier said than done, because the wall was just as forbidding as it was in the 1960s. It was either a wall or a fence. It usually was two walls or two fences. It was minefields, it was dogs, it was guard towers, it was tanks, it was guards. How to get over from one side to the other? Well, he told me the story that his girlfriend and her two sisters had gotten visa to Hungary, another Eastern Bloc, Warsaw Pact country where East Germans could travel. And they had all gotten them at the same time, which was unusual. And he knew from the news that starting in June or July, individuals, one by one, groups of twos, no more, were crossing the border from Hungary into Austria, so that the Iron Curtain was becoming porous in Hungary. That's what he asked me to help him with, try to get these girls from Hungary into Austria. Now I say, sure, yes, and that surely was something you say when you're in your 20s, because it was also a naive thing to say, because it was a crime to be what we at that point was called an escape agent. Not only if an East German citizen was caught trying to cross the border, would this person be thrown into jail, but also the West German citizen, as an escape agent, would face a tough prison sentence. Could be many years. So to say yes was sort of understandable in human terms, but if you measure it against the cost, the risk, even in 1989, it was dangerous. But again, we didn't think about it. What we did was we took the car, went to Austria, checked out the border from the Austrian side, went to see hunters, because these people know the woods, they know their environment, they know what the border looks like. So we did our homework, got maps, checked out every spot where in the last week somebody had crossed the border. A couple of days later we would arrive at Budapest, where we were supposed to meet the three young women at the train station. It was a great moment for me to just watch my friend and his girlfriend meet at the train station. It was a hot August day, and you could feel right away that something was in the air in this city. First of all, this was still communist Eastern Europe. You felt it like you were being watched. And certainly we know now there was a lot of Secret Service in that city at that time. So we didn't have a lot of money, so the place for us to go was the campground. So we went to the city campground in Budapest, and boy, there was a lot of people, mostly East Germans, and you could sense they were all there for the same reason. Of course, nobody talked about it, because you didn't know whether your neighbor in the tent was somebody who was attempting to get out, or somebody who would be from the Secret Service. So the only thing we didn't talk about was why we were really there, and nobody else did. We explored the city, not so much the sights as the political situation. Because at that time, in August of 1989, East German citizens tried to get into the West German embassy and seek refuge there. The ambassador had opened the embassy, and ever more people were getting into the courtyard of the West German embassy. And in the basement, they were printing West German passports for East German citizens, because every German would have the right to get a West German passport. And at some point, they were at capacity. So the West German, that happened exactly when we came to Budapest, asked a Catholic priest of a neighboring church whether he would open his courtyard to these East German refugees. And he said he would. And so the next day we went to that courtyard. And again, it was this odd atmosphere of something was in the air, but something dangerous just as well. Today we know that the priest or somebody in the church seems to have tolerated, maybe knowingly, maybe not knowingly, that actually the West German Secret Service was checking passports at the gate. And today we also know that the East German Secret Service was manning the rooftops around. So we didn't know this, yet we felt this wasn't right. This was so unusual. We were in communist Hungary, even though it was reform communist. This was quite a sight. In that courtyard, we received a flyer, and it was an invitation. It was an invitation to something that was framed as a pan-European picnic. It was organized by an Austrian group run by the son or the grandson of the last Austrian emperor, and it was a meeting on the border between Austrian and Hungarian cultural groups. Now that in itself had been unheard of before the reform summer of 1989. So we didn't really know what to make of it, but the atmosphere was, and rumor was, something might happen there. This is a place you want to go to. It was clearly conveyed to us, and it was just, maybe it was just the rumor mill, but we were told this is where you need to go. So next morning we drove out to the border area. Lots of cars were going there. A whole convoy from Budapest was going out to Sopron, the location of that picnic. We got to the border, and there it was. The wall in Hungary was not a wall, but it was two fences, maybe 500 yards away from each other. In the middle, there was wasteland. That was the no man's land where they used to have minefields, watchtowers, dogs, patrols, sometimes even tanks. Now, the reform communists in Hungary had changed the border regime early in 1989. Hungarians could now travel. And later in 1989, they had also taken down the inner fence, and they had dismantled the automatic machine guns. They had taken out the minefields. What still existed was the outer fence and the guards. So anybody from a foreign country, any other Warsaw Pact country, including East Germany, who would be apprehended at the border, and they still were under order to shoot if somebody were to cross the border. We got to this location where this pan-European picnic was supposed to take place. There was folk groups, there was music, there was a guard tower that people could now climb and look at. There was picnic, there was food. So this all seemed to be a celebration of people coming together at what used to be the minefield. But again, there was this odd atmosphere that something was going to happen. And so we started following a group of people who walked down a path towards the west. This was just in a cornfield. and people started joining that initial group. All of a sudden, we were surrounded by hundreds of people starting to grab their things and walk towards the border. I actually was somehow scared that something, now this was the moment we actually were looking for, something would be happening, but when it happened we were scared. So the only thing we could do was get in the car. So I asked everybody, get in my car, so as if that was a protection, and against what? But so everybody was walking, hundreds of people were taking this little path 500 yards towards Austria, and we were in a car. As we were approaching the border, it's quite an interesting sight. You would be expecting some border crossing or something. No, it was just a gate in a fence. But there were people there, people on the other side, on the Austrian side, and there were some, maybe half a dozen or so, on the Hungarian side. And 4 or 5 of them were actually border police. When we first approached them, they didn't look at us because they were looking to process people from Austria coming to join that party, that celebration. Today we know that the commander of that group, a colonel, was completely surprised that all of a sudden behind him a group of what was clear on first sight of East Germans was coming. And he, in interviews said later, he decided within a few seconds that he didn't want to go down in history as a mass murderer. So within seconds, he told his group of border guards, we were ordered to process Austrians coming in here. We look westward and process these people. We don't look at the people in back of us. It's a very odd way to approach this, but it was the luck of our lives in this moment. Because what happened was people were gathering around this small group of border guards at that gate. And then this all happened within 20 seconds or so, because people just pushed and said, open this gate, open this gate. And then somebody pulled and the gate was open. The border guards didn't do anything. People started running. We all ran because everybody ran, and all of a sudden we were somewhere in the woods. Somebody said, where are we? You are in Austria. And that was the moment when the 3 women, they just teared up. We just hugged and started crying for a few minutes. It was a great moment. It was a wonderful experience. Now for us Westerners, it wasn't the real thing. We were happy for them. But you can just imagine what it means for somebody who had been behind bars, so to say, for a whole life. It's one interesting moment. We immediately realized this had not happened before. Not since the wall has had Europe seen a moment like this. By the end of that evening, 700 to 900 people crossed that little border before it was, that little gate before it was closed again. Now this event is only one of many events of 1989. We tend to think of 1989 as one seminal day in which somebody opened the wall. But in fact, it's a succession of events, and it started with this first mass flight of East German citizens. These people are dear to me to the day. In fact, the couple, they're still together. They're in fact married, have 3 children, and live in Heidelberg, West Germany. This is a love story and a political story, and it does have a happy end.